The Fiat 131, additionally called Mirafiori, is a small medium family car produced by the Italian car manufacturer Fiat from 1974 to 1984. It was exhibited at 1974 Turin Motor Show. The 131 was the replacement for the successful Fiat 124, and available as a 2-door and 4-door saloon and 5-door estate. The 131 was given the Mirafiori name after the Turin suburb where the cars were produced. Naming the car in this way marked a break with the former Fiat convention, established in the 1960s, of naming their mainstream models only with a 3-digit number, and it set the pattern for Fiat to adopt a new naming practice, with carefully chosen names for subsequent new models. Initially, the 131 was offered with 1.3L and 1.6L overhead valve engines. Revisions were made in 1978 and 1981, and all models were produced until production ceased in 1984. In total, 1,513,800 units were produced in Italy. Specifications: the Fiat 131 employed construction techniques and technologies typical of its day. The body was a steel monocoque. Designed and styled on the typical 3-box design, with distinct boxes for the engine compartment, passenger compartment, and boot. The major mechanical components were also conventional and contemporary, but with some notable advances. The 131 employed a front-engine, rear-wheel drive layout, whereby the engine is longitudinally mounted in the front of the car. The gearbox is directly behind the engine, and a tubular propeller shaft, under the transmission tunnel, transmits the drive to a solid live rear axle. The engines were all inline 4 types, derived from those used in the outgoing 124 range, with a cast-iron cylinder block and aluminium alloy cylinder head. Initially the 131 was offered only with pushrod valve gear, which offered the innovation of being the worldwide first engine with OHV valve gear and a belt-driven camshaft. Only later in the Modella Euro unregistered trademark S-Life came the well-known double overhead camshaft engines which used a tooth timing belt. Fuel supply was via a single Weber ADF twin-choke carburetor, fed from a trunk-mounted steel fuel tank. Traditional contact breaker ignition systems were used, usually with Marelli distributors. The suspension system utilized fully independent front suspension, with McPherson struts, track control arms and anti-roll bar. The rear suspension was quite advanced, in that the rear axle was controlled by double unequal-length trailing arms and a panned rod, with coil springs and direct-acting dampers. This design proved far superior to many of his contemporaries, especially with vehicle stability and handling. The braking system was also typical. The front brakes were disc brakes, using a solid iron disc and a single-piston sliding caliper. The rears were drum brakes, utilizing leading and trailing shoe design operated by a dual-piston fixed slave cylinder. They were operated hydraulically, with a tandem master cylinder assisted by a vacuum servo using 2 separate circuits. A rear-mounted load-sensing valve varied the bias of effort applied to the rear brakes, dependent on the load being carried. A centrally located floor-mounted handbrake operated on the rear axle using Bowden cables. The car's interior offered another worldwide first in having the secondary switches in the dashboard illuminated by a central bulb somewhere in the dashboard and fiber optics from there to the switches. Series 1, initially the 131 came with 1,297 cc's or 1,585 cc's OHV inline-4 engines, of the engine family first introduced in the Fiat 124. The first series was available with 2 body styles: saloon and estate familiar. Station wagons were built by Seat in Spain, but were labeled Fiats for all non-Spanish markets. There were 2 trim levels, the basic 131, and the better appointed 131S, or 131 Special, which could be distinguished from the base model by its quadruple circular headlamps, chrome window surrounds and different instrumentation. U.S. market versions had an SOHC 1.8-liter 4 and were available with a Gram 3-speed automatic. In 1976, 400 examples of the Fiat Abarth 131 Rally were built for homologation purposes. These cars were built in a cooperation between Fiat, Bertone and Abarth. Bertone took part completed two-door standard body shells from the production line in Mirafiori, fitted plastic mud guards front and rear, a plastic bonnet and boot lid, and modified the metal structure to accept the independent rear suspension. The cars were fully painted and trimmed and then delivered back to the Fiat Special Rivolta plant, where they received the Abarth mechanicals. The street version of the car used a 16-valve DOHC derivative of the standard DOHC engine, which equipped with a double Weber downdraft carburetor produced 140 picoseconds. The street cars used the standard gearbox with no synchronization, the hopelessly under-dimensioned brake system of the small Fiat 127. Competition cars used dry sump lubrication and eventually Cargo-Fisher mechanical fuel injection. In race specifications, the engine produced up to 240 picoseconds in 1980, being driven to World Championship status by Walter R. Paragraph HRL. Another special version was the nearly 5-meter-long 131 diplomatic limousine version made by Salvatore Diamantis Carrozzeria near Turin. Series 2, the 131 got a minor facelift in 1978. New DOHC, or twin-cam engines arrived, and these models were badged as Super Mirafiori. The biggest change exterior-wise for the Series 2 was larger rectangular-shaped front lights, new bumpers, new bigger rear lights and new interior trim including a chunky, single-spoked steering wheel. Also in 1978, the two-door sporting version racing with 115 picoseconds twin-cam engine, was launched. This car had 4 round headlights, different grille, spoilers and extended wheel arches, and a short-throw 5-speed gearbox. The racing had top speed of 180 km per hour. Diesel engine versions also had 4 round headlights, and a noticeable bump in the hood to accommodate the taller engine. The Familiar was renamed as Panorama. The Series 2 was marketed in the United States as the Fiat Brava from mid-year 1978 with the same 1.8-liter 4 as had been used in the U.S. market 131, but before the year was over this was replaced by the 2-liter twin-cam 4 also seen in the Spider. Initially, a better-equipped Super Brava was also available, but the base model and Super Tag were dropped for 1979. For 1980 a more powerful fuel-injected version was added while the estate version was dropped. For 1981 the EFI engine became standard equipment and the headlamps were changed for single rectangular units, but this was to be the last year for the Brava/131 in the US. 131 hybrid in 1980, Fiat presented the 131 Ibrido, an experimental prototype featuring the small 903cc engine from the Fiat 127 engine, detuned to 33 horsepower, and mated to a 24 kilowatts DC electric motor. Power is also provided by regeneration via the braking system. The 250 batteries are located in the boot, adding 175 kilograms to the weight. Series 3, the 131 was updated again in March 1981. By this time, the car was no longer offered in the USA. Production of the racing sport version ceased, although these were sold well into 1982. The same 2.0 TC engine went to the Super Mirafiori. The car was renamed 131 Super Brava in Australia. The car received a slightly updated interior, whilst lower rubbing strips found their way onto all models up to CL's specification. The Super Mirafiori received larger lower door cladding. Mechanically, Mirafiori versions now received overhead cam engines rather than pushrod versions. A new 1.4-liter engine and a revised 1.6-liter. Also new were the clutch and gearboxes, a tweaked suspension was also introduced and the gas tank increased in size by 3 liters, for a total 53L capacity. In June 1981, a new sport version, the Volumetrico Abarth, was introduced to some markets, with a supercharged version of the familiar 2-liter twin-cam. This car, also known as the 2000 TC Compressor, was built in a small series and could reach 190 km per hour. In 1983, the production of saloon version was discontinued, but the estate, now named 131 Mirafiori, remained in production with two engine choices until 1985, when they were replaced with the Ritmo-based Regatta Weekend. These last versions featured four round headlights and the by now familiar 5-bar grille. Motorsport equals the 131 is a rally car equals, the Fiat Abarth 131 was a very successful Group 4 rally car, winning the manufacturer's World Rally Championship 3 times, in 1977, 1978, and in 1980. With this car Marco Allen won the 1978 FIA Cup for Drivers and Walter R. Paragraph HRL won the 1980 Drivers' World Rally Championship. Between 1976 and 1981 the Fiat 131 won 20 WRC events. Other notable drivers were Sandro Maneri, Timo Salonen, Attilio Bottega and Michael Lamouton. Between 1975 and 1977 the official works cars carried the Olio Fiat blue and yellow livery, then during 1978 and 1979 seasons they were sponsored by Italian airline Alitalia and bore their distinctive red, white and green livery. World Rally Championship event victories equals, Fiat Abarth 131's recorded victories in the following World Rally Championship events. Other motorsports equals, the 131 was also used in the IMSA GT Championship under the GTO classification. Non-Italian 131 variations Seat 131 equals. The Seat 131 started its production in early 1975 in Barcelona with two versions initially offered, Seat 131L, featuring rectangular front lamps, 1,438 cc's OHC engine and 4-speed gearbox and Seat 131E featuring 4 round headlamps, 1,592 cc's DOHC engine and 5-speed gearbox. The range grew up in 1976 with the Seat 131 Familiar, estate version offered with both engines. In 1977 the 131 Automatico was released and the following year a very short production of the Seat 131 CLX 1800 was offered. Spain was the only place where the estate 131 was built, but in the export these were labeled Fiat 131 Familiar. In 1978, the Seat 131 evolves into the Seat 131 Mirafiori Super Mirafiori, with the same changes as seen on its Italian cousin. The engines remained largely the same, but a 1.8-litre diesel Perkins 44108 engine was available in 1979. A further CLX Special Edition was launched in 1980. Available only in metallic silver or metallic bronze colors, this 131 CLX had a 1,919 cc's engine, developing 114 picoseconds at 5,800 rpms. In 1981, the diesel version was developed with a new SOFIM engine. This 2,500 cc's engine was much more powerful than the Perkins version and was one of the most successful taxis in early 80s Spain. In 1982, the Seat 131 changed again, gathering all the body changes seen on the Fiat 131 Series 3. The 131 was now available in CL, Super Mirafiori and Diplomatic versions. The Diplomatic was the top of the range, with a 1,995 cc's engine and features such as power steering, power windows or air conditioning. The Panorama versions were the cars chosen by the Cuerpo Nacional de Policía as patrol cars. In 1984, the Seat 131 range was discontinued, without a direct substitute, and the Fiat Ritmo-based Seat Malaga took its place in 1985. Murat 131 equals. Tufar Industries in Turkey also based their initial production on Fiat 131s built under Fiat license. 131-based models included the Murat 131 built in Bursa, Turkey, the Doğan, Angstrom and the Kartal. These vehicles enjoyed a very long production run, and were later replaced by newer Fiat models. Polski Fiat 131P equals. Final assembly of Fiat 131 took also place in Poland by Fabryka Samochoda Kube W. Osobowiec in the years 1975 to 1981. First series cars were available only in special trim and were called Polski Fiat 131P Mirafiori. Cars of second series were known under the name Fiat 131P Mirafiori and were offered in L and CL trim levels. Other producers. The Fiat 131 was also produced at Helwan, in Egypt, by El Nas since at least 1982, on the basis of complete knockdown kits. This was followed by CKD assembly of the Tofar Murat 131 between 1991 to 2009. The Tofar Murat 131 has also been assembled in Ethiopia by Holland Car between 2006 to 2010. Other CKD production of the Fiat 131 has taken place in the following countries: Car Cube RDOBA, Argentina, Fiat Car Cube RDOBA, Bogotá, Colombia, San Jose Copyright, Costa Rica, Jakarta, Indonesia, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, Casablanca, Morocco, Lisbon, Portugal, Singapore, Bangkok, Thailand, Caracas, Venezuela, Livingston, Zambia. References. External links: 131mirafiori.com, 131abath.com, Italia Haven, Irish and European Forum for Fiat Owners.